Okay, the user wants a 300-word introduction for a YouTube video based on that cheating confession Reddit story title. They gave very specific instructions. No headings, simple natural language, human-centric, avoid AI tone, stay within YouTube policies, and end on a cliffhanger. The title itself is brutal. After 10 years of marriage, my wife confessed. The worst part, she only did it because he dumped her. That secondary betrayal angle is what makes it unique. The emotional layers here are complex. The decade-long marriage, the delayed confession, and the humiliation of being the backup plan. Let me unpack the user's deeper needs. They're clearly creating content around infidelity stories, probably for a relationship drama channel. The emphasis on human-centric and avoiding AI tone suggests they want raw, relatable storytelling. The policy warning implies they've had issues with content strikes before. Smart to avoid explicit details. For structure, I'll open with a question. Hook effective for engagement, then establish the marriage's longevity to build contrast. The confession scene needs visceral details, shaky hands, avoiding eye contact to feel real. Must emphasize the 10 years repeatedly for impact. The cliffhanger should freeze at the most painful moment, right after revealing she only confessed because the affair partner dumped her. Word choice matters. Using phrases like punch to the gut keeps it conversational. Avoiding melodrama but keeping tension with phrases like truth she'd been carrying. The unresolved tension comes from not showing his reaction yet. That's the cliffhanger. Noting pitfalls to avoid: no victim-blaming language, no explicit descriptions of affairs, and keeping focus on emotional impact rather than sexual details. The phrase "didn't want me anymore" implies rejection without violating policies. Final check, 287 words, ends mid-emotional freefall, uses keywords like betrayal and confession naturally. The rawness comes through in details like the anniversary photo that should resonate with viewers who've experienced deception. Here's a 300-word introduction focusing on that gut-wrenching confession. Start with quiet intensity, maybe a sigh or a pause. 10 years. 10 years of building a life together. Anniversaries, inside jokes. That stupid photo from our honeymoon we kept on the fridge even though we both looked ridiculous. 10 years of thinking I knew my wife, really knew her. And then, one Tuesday night after the kids were finally asleep, she just ... shattered it all. It wasn't dramatic at first. No yelling, no slammed doors. Just this heavy silence in the living room, the TV flickering on mute. She wouldn't look at me. Her hands were shaking. And then the words came out, quiet and sharp, like shards of glass. She confessed. Not to a moment of weakness, not to something recent, but to an affair. An affair that happened years ago. All that time, all those ordinary days, she'd been carrying this secret while I loved her, trusted her completely. The shock was like a physical punch to the gut. 10 years of marriage. And she chose now. Why? What finally made her crack after hiding it so long? My mind raced. Guilt. A sudden attack of conscience. Did she think I somehow found out? The confusion was almost worse than the initial pain. I just stared, waiting for the reason. Desperate to understand the timing of this bomb she'd dropped on our lives. And then she told me. The worst part. The thing that twisted the knife deeper than I thought possible. She only told me because he ended it. Because he didn't want her anymore. That's why the truth finally came out. Not because she couldn't bear deceiving me any longer. Not because our marriage meant enough to come clean, but because he dumped her. Suddenly the 10 years of trust, the life we built, it all felt like a consolation prize. She wasn't confessing to me. She was just left with me. And as that realization hit ... Okay, the user wants me to continue the story from where the previous introduction left off. The introduction ended with the husband realizing his wife only confessed to her affair because the other man dumped her. Now I need to write the next 300 words that provide background and context while deepening the plot and characters. I should keep building suspense without resolving any tension. The user emphasized maintaining a simple, natural tone that feels human-centric and doesn't violate YouTube policies. That means avoiding explicit content while focusing on emotional betrayal. I'll need to explore the husband's shock and the wife's behavior patterns during the affair period. Maybe include some subtle clues he might have missed. Those unexplained absences, emotional distance, sudden phone habits. But I shouldn't reveal too much yet since we're building mystery. I think focusing on these elements would work well. His mental spiral as he replays years of marriage, her small behavioral changes that seemed innocent at the time, the cruel irony of her confession timing, his struggle between anger and wanting to understand the challenge is making it feel raw and human without being melodramatic. I'll use concrete details: the anniversary trip where she seemed distracted, how she'd take her phone to the bathroom. These specific memories will make the betrayal more visceral while keeping it relatable for YouTube compliance. I'll keep the affair references vague, no names, locations, or physical details. The pain should come from the emotional deception, not explicit scenarios. The focus stays on broken trust and that devastating confession motive. The ending should leave things unresolved, maybe with him staring at her, realizing he doesn't know this person he married. That maintains the cliffhanger while deepening the central question. Can trust ever be rebuilt when the confession came from rejection rather than remorse? The silence after she said it felt thicker than the confession itself. I just sat there, frozen, staring at the woman I'd shared a decade with, a mortgage with, children with. Suddenly, she was a stranger. All those little moments flashed through my mind, the times she seemed distant. The late nights at work that felt a little too frequent a few years back. The way she'd suddenly get protective of her phone, screen angled away. I'd brush them off. Life gets busy, right? Stress happens. You trust your partner. That's what marriage is. But now every single one of those moments screamed betrayal. I pictured her with him. Who even was he? A coworker, an old friend, someone completely new she'd risked everything for. The sheer length of time she'd hidden it was a separate wound. Years she'd looked me in the eye every single day, kissed me goodbye, celebrated birthdays, comforted me when I lost my dad, all while holding this massive, corrosive secret. The deception felt almost worse than the affair itself. It poisoned every memory. And the reason she finally spoke, that was the real kicker. It wasn't guilt eating her alive. It wasn't some desperate need to clear her conscience for us. It was because he rejected her. She was only sitting here, confessing her infidelity, because her backup plan, me, our marriage, our family, was suddenly her only plan. She wasn't choosing me. She was settling for me because her first choice walked away. The humiliation burned hotter than the anger. I felt like a discarded safety net, only acknowledged when the trapeze artist fell. I finally found my voice, rough and shaky. How long I managed? How long were you involved? And then the question that clawed its way out, raw and painful. And how long ago did he end it? How long have you been sitting on this, knowing you only told me because he didn't want you anymore? My mind raced, trying to pinpoint a shift in her recent behavior. Had she been sad? Distracted? Was that the reason behind the extra tension? Last month I'd blamed on work. Had her sadness been grief for a lost affair, not stress? The timeline of her heartbreak was a mystery I desperately needed to solve, even though every answer felt like a fresh cut. Who broke us? And why was I only finding out now, as her consolation prize? Okay, the user wants me to continue this painful infidelity story they're creating for a YouTube video. They've built this gut-wrenching narrative about a husband discovering his wife's affair only after her lover dumped her. Looking at where we left off, the husband just asked those devastating questions about the timeline. The wife's reaction in the kitchen felt so real, that physical recoil when confronted. The user really wants me to dig deeper into the conflict without resolving anything. What's interesting is how the user keeps emphasizing natural tone and avoiding a yay-feeling language. They're clearly crafting this for maximum human connection, probably because YouTube audiences spot inauthenticity instantly. The consolation prize metaphor from earlier was powerful. I should keep that thread going. Let me think about the angles to explore. First, the husband's spiraling thoughts about their entire marriage being a lie. Those perfect memories now, feeling poisoned. Second, the practical nightmare of living together while shattered sleeping arrangements. Kid routines. Third, the mystery of the other man. Not knowing who he is makes it all feel more invasive. I should avoid making the wife a cartoon villain though. Even in betrayal, showing her human reactions, the shaking hands, the inability to answer keeps it relatable. The user was smart to include those physical details earlier. The keywords need to weave in naturally. Emotional affair, trust issues, marriage counseling is a possibility but not a solution yet. The tension should keep building like a pressure cooker. Him noticing new clues in past behavior, her silence speaking volumes. Most importantly, no resolutions, no hopeful notes. Just the raw, suspended agony of two people realizing their life together was built on quicksand. The kids' laughter down the hall contrast will kill viewers emotionally. That's good YouTube storytelling, juxtaposing domestic normalcy with internal devastation. The silence stretched again, thick and suffocating. She flinched when I asked how long, her eyes darting towards the kitchen like she wanted to escape. A year, she whispered, barely audible. Almost 2 years ago now. 2 years. The affair wasn't recent history. It was buried deep in the timeline of our supposedly happy marriage. And the worst part, he ended it over a year ago. A whole year of her walking around our house, sleeping beside me, making plans for the future. All while grieving the loss of him and still choosing silence. She only spoke when the wound of his rejection stopped bleeding enough for her to face the mess she'd made with me. Suddenly our entire marriage felt like a stage play. Were the vacations, the family dinners, the quiet nights, watching movies, were any of them real? Or was she just going through the motions, playing the role of wife while her heart was somewhere else? The emotional affair because it had to be emotional too, right? You don't hide something like that for years without deep feelings. It poisoned everything retroactively. Every argument, every moment of distance, every time she seemed preoccupied. I started re-examining it all through this horrifying new lens. Had I been living a lie the whole time? Living together became its own kind of torture. We moved like ghosts through the house, orbiting each other, avoiding eye contact. The kids, thankfully oblivious to the earthquake beneath their feet, were the only anchors to normalcy. We plastered on smiles for them, a performance that left me hollowed out. At night, the silence in our bedroom was deafening. I'd lie rigid on my side of the bed, the space between us feeling like a canyon. Was she thinking of him, regretting the confession, or just regretting getting caught out when he left? The sheer injustice of it burned her grief for another man was the only reason I knew the truth. My pain was collateral damage to her heartbreak. I became obsessed with the unknown. Who was he? Someone from work, an old flame, a neighbor. Every man she'd ever mentioned casually became a suspect. I'd watch her texting, wondering if it was him, even though she swore all contact was severed. The lack of answers fueled the anger, mixing with the deep hurt and humiliation. Trust issues. That felt like an understatement. The foundation of everything we'd built was sand. Could marriage counseling even fix this? How do you rebuild trust when the betrayal was so profound? And the confession wasn't born of remorse for hurting me, but of her own pain from being rejected. The question hung heavy, unanswered, suffocating any hope. Was our entire marriage just the place she landed when her first choice didn't want her anymore? And if so, how could I ever look at her the same way? The image of her, confessing not for us, but because he dumped her, replayed constantly, a loop of secondary betrayal. I couldn't escape. Okay, the user wants me to continue building this infidelity story toward the climax without resolving anything. They've been very specific about tone and style, natural, human-centric, suspenseful, and YouTube policy compliant. Looking at the story so far, we've got this raw emotional landscape. A husband shattered by his wife's confession that only came because her affair partner dumped her. The tension is already thick with betrayal, humiliation, and those haunting unanswered questions about the other man. Where to take this next? The user wants maximum suspense before the climax. I should amplify what's already working. The husband's obsessive need for answers warring with his disgust. The suffocating domesticity, the wife's ambiguous remorse. Maybe introduce a tangible clue, not the resolution, but something that makes the tension unbearable. The phone. That's perfect. It's relatable. Everyone has that moment of seeing a partner's phone light up suspiciously. It escalates naturally from his existing paranoia, and it creates that delicious will he won't he dilemma about violating privacy. The keywords flow naturally here. Emotional affair, trust issues, that constant questioning of her motives. Important to keep it visceral though. Not just he saw a notification but the physical details, the glow in the darkroom, the instinctive freeze, the pounding heart. Make the audience feel that moral crossroads with him. And end right on the knife's edge. No resolution. Just the trembling hand and the notification that might shatter everything. Gotta watch the YouTube policies. No explicit details about the affair, no glorifying revenge. Just the human devastation of broken trust. The real violation here is emotional, not physical. Keep the focus on his internal torment. That's what makes it human-centric. The wife's perspective stays murky deliberately. Is she texting the affair partner, a friend, planning to leave? The not knowing is what tortures him and the audience. That's the suspense fuel. Save any revelations for the actual climax later, and done. Left him hovering over that phone, sweating bullets. Perfect unresolved tension. The user gets there building suspense. The keywords are woven in, and it all feels painfully human. Nobody would guess I wrote this mess of trembling hands and glowing screens. The days blurred into a numb routine. We functioned for the kids, packed lunches, helped with homework, drove to soccer practice. But the air between us crackled with unspoken pain and unanswered questions. Every shared chore, every forced conversation about the weather, felt like salt in the wound. The image of her heart broken over him, confessing only because he discarded her, played on a loop in my mind. It wasn't just the infidelity. It was the devastating why now. Her delayed confession felt like a secondary betrayal, twisting the knife deeper. The silence became unbearable. I needed answers even if they destroyed me. Who was he? What did he have that I didn't? How could she mourn the loss of someone who helped her shatter our marriage? The emotional affair, the depth of her feelings for him while sharing a bed with me. It poisoned every memory. Trust issues weren't just a problem. The very concept of trust felt like a joke. How could I believe anything she said now? Every time her phone buzzed, my stomach clenched. Was it him? Had she lied about cutting contact? The suspicion was a constant, gnawing presence. One night, the tension hit a breaking point. We were lying in the dark, the space between us vast and icy. The kids were finally asleep, the quiet pressed in, suffocating. All the pain, the anger, the crushing humiliation, boiled over. My voice came out low, strained, barely recognizable. Tell me his name. It wasn't a question. It was a demand ripped from somewhere raw and desperate. Who was he? I need to know who destroyed us. She flinched like I'd struck her. In the faint moonlight seeping through the blinds, I saw tears welling. But this time, they sparked fury, not pity. Were they for him, for herself, or for the mess she'd made? Why? She whispered, her voice thick. What good will knowing his name do? It won't change anything. It won't take away the hurt, because I deserve to know. My voice rose, sharp in the quiet room. I fought to lower it, conscious of the sleeping children down the hall. You kept this secret for years. You only told me because he didn't want you. I deserve to know who I was competing against in my own marriage, who was worth throwing away. 10 years, the words hung heavy, charged with all the pain and unanswered questions about her affair partner. The emotional neglect I'd felt suddenly had a terrifyingly specific focus. She turned her face away, burying it in the pillow. Her shoulders shook silently. Was she crying, or just refusing to face me? The suspense was agonizing. Would she finally reveal the identity of the man who'd occupied her heart while I shared her life, or would she retreat further behind her wall of silence? The air vibrated with unspoken conflict. My hand clenched the sheet, knuckles white. The name felt like the key to understanding the depth of the betrayal, the extent of her emotional affair, and the true reason behind her devastatingly delayed confession. But getting it, would knowing, finally shatter whatever fragile, broken pieces were left between us. The silence stretched thick and charged, the moment suspended on a knife's edge. Just as I thought she might never speak, a faint, choked sound escaped her. My breath caught. Was it the beginning of a name? Or just another sob for the man who'd walked away, leaving me to pick up the pieces of a marriage built, it seemed, on lies and leftovers? Okay, the user wants me to continue this intense marital betrayal story right from the cliffhanger where the wife might reveal the affair partner's name. They need a second plot twist that escalates conflict without resolution. Looking at the history, this is clearly for a YouTube story channel, probably one of those Reddit-style dramatic narration. The user's been very specific about tone, natural, human-centric, suspenseful. They're avoiding policy violations by focusing on emotional fallout rather than explicit content. The previous section ended with that perfect, tense moment. The wife, choking out a sound that could be either a name or a sob. The audience is primed for revelation, but the twist should surprise them. I recall the core pain points established earlier. The delayed confession, only after the other man dumped her. The humiliation of being a consolation prize. What if the twist isn't just who he is, but that the affair never truly ended? That adds layers more deception, fresh betrayal. Let's see. The husband hears a name he knows. Not a stranger, but someone from their shared life. That's more devastating. Maybe a mutual friend, a family member. That would explain her extreme hesitation to confess. The neighbor angle from earlier titles could work. Important to maintain. The visceral first-person perspective. The physical reactions, the stomach drop, the cold dread, make it feel human. Must avoid melodrama though. Keep his thought process raw, but believable. No, not him. Anyone but him. The SEO keywords should flow naturally. Affair partner, emotional affair, trust issues, marriage betrayal. The phrase secondary betrayal from earlier sections is crucial. This twist makes it tertiary. Biggest challenge is making the twist shocking but not needs set up through earlier hints, her protectiveness of phone, unexplained absences. The neighbor detail works because proximity enables ongoing contact. His wave taking on new meaning, that's the gut punch. Ending on the wave image creates haunting suspense. Is it really him? Could there be another explanation? Audience will debate in comments. Perfect for engagement. Better avoid anything policy violating. No explicit descriptions, just emotional devastation. The real violation here is psychological, the destruction of trust and safety in one's own home. That's what YouTube allows. This twist raises all stakes. Trust obliterated, home violated, kids potentially affected if playdates happen there. The husband's next move becomes critical. Will he confront, investigate, explode, and the wife's reaction to being caught in a fresh lie? That's the next cliffhanger. That choked sound hung in the dark room, sharp as a knife point. For a second I thought it was just another sob, another wave of her grief crashing over her. Then, barely audible, muffled by the pillow, a name escaped. Her lips. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't some faceless coworker or distant acquaintance. It was a name I knew, a name attached to a face I saw regularly. Mark, our neighbor from 3 doors down. The guy who borrowed my lawnmower last summer. The one whose kids played with ours. The one who always gave a friendly wave from his driveway. The recognition hit me like ice water dumped down my spine. My breath stopped. The room tilted. How many barbecues had we shared? How many times had she taken cookies over when his wife was sick? The sheer, terrifying ordinariness of it made the betrayal feel even more grotesque. It wasn't some shadowy figure. It was the man who lived on our street, whose life casually intersected with ours. The proximity, the sheer audacity of it happening right under my nose, sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. This wasn't just an affair. It was a violation of our entire life, our neighborhood, our sense of safety. The words scraped out of my throat, raw and broken. How could you, with him right here? The questions tumbled out, fueled by a dizzying mix of rage and profound humiliation. His wife, does she know? Or was she just another person you both lied to? The web of deception felt suddenly vast, suffocating. How many lies had been spun to facilitate this? How many times had she walked out our front door, waved at me, and gone straight to him? She finally turned her head, her face pale and streaked in the moonlight. "It's over," she insisted again, her voice trembling but firm. "It ended a year ago. I told you that. But the name changed everything. Knowing it was Mark, knowing he lived mere steps away, made her previous assurances feel hollow, suspicious. Was it really over? Or just hidden better? The trust issues deepened into an abyss. Every interaction she'd ever had with him, every friendly chat over the fence, every time she'd mentioned running into him at the store, now screamed infidelity. Had their emotional affair continued even after the physical part supposedly stopped? Was she still pining for him every time she saw his car pull in? The delayed confession suddenly felt even more sinister. Was she protecting him by waiting until he was safely out of the picture? Or was she protecting herself, knowing the fallout would be nuclear once his name was known? The secondary betrayal, confessing only because he dumped her, now had a face, a name, a house I could point to. The pain wasn't just emotional, it felt geographical. Our home, our street, felt contaminated. I pushed myself out of bed, needing air, needing to escape the room that suddenly felt like a prison. My mind raced, picturing Mark's smug face. Was it smug? Had I just never noticed? His wave now seeming like a taunt. The urge to confront him, to storm down the street and smash my fist into that familiarity, was a physical ache. But beneath the rage was a chilling, paralyzing fear. If it was Mark and he lived so close, had the affair truly ended? Or was I, even now, the oblivious husband, living next door to the man who'd shattered my marriage? The uncertainty was a torture worse than knowing. As I stood by the window, staring out into the dark street towards his house, a single, horrifying thought crystallized. He's still here, and she only told me because he didn't want her anymore. The silence of the night pressed in, heavy with the weight of unspoken secrets and the terrifying possibility that the betrayal wasn't just in the past, but still lived, breathing, just 3 doors down. Okay. The user wants me to continue the infidelity story and reveal the climax with a final twist. Let me understand where we left off. The husband just learned his wife had an affair with their neighbor Mark, and he's reeling from the betrayal. The tension is at its peak. He's standing by the window staring at Mark's house, consumed by rage and humiliation. The user specifically asks for a resolution to the main conflict, but with an unexpected twist. I need to provide closure while it's still surprising the audience. The keywords to naturally include would be infidelity recovery, emotional affair, marriage counseling, trust issues, and delayed confession. The challenge is making the climax feel satisfying yet realistic. Since this is for YouTube, I should avoid anything violating content policies, no graphic violence or explicit content. The twist should be psychological rather than physical. I recall the core pain points. The wife confessed only after being dumped, making the husband feel like a consolation prize. The neighbor's proximity adds another layer of horror. For the resolution, the husband needs to confront both his wife and Mark. But the twist could come from Mark's perspective. Perhaps Mark reveals he ended it because he discovered something about the wife, like she'd done this before, that would explain his sudden rejection and give the husband a new perspective. The wife's reaction could confirm it's true, showing a pattern of infidelity. This makes the delayed confession even more calculated. The confrontation should be intense but verbal. I'll have the husband confront Mark first, leading to the revelation. Then he returns home for the final confrontation with his wife. When he asks if there were others, her silence confirms his worst fear. This twist reshapes everything. She didn't confess out of guilt or even just because Mark dumped her, but because she was afraid he'd exposed her pattern of cheating. This resolves the main conflict. He understands the truth while adding a devastating twist: multiple affairs. The keywords fit naturally: the discovery of serial infidelity, the shattered trust beyond repair, and the realization that marriage counseling would be pointless. The ending leaves him walking out, suggesting divorce as the only path. Emotionally powerful but policy compliant. I'll keep the language raw and simple, focusing on his physical reactions, shaking, nausea to show the emotional impact. The dialogue should feel real. Mark's reluctant confession, the wife's silent admission. This humanizes the tragedy while delivering the requested twist. The rage was a physical thing, buzzing under my skin. I didn't remember pulling on jeans or grabbing my keys. The cool night air hit me like a slap as I stormed down our driveway, past the familiar parked cars, straight towards Mark's house. The streetlights cast long, distorted shadows, making everything feel unreal, like a nightmare. I couldn't wake from 3 doors down. Each step fueled the fire. This wasn't just infidelity anymore. It was a violation of our entire community, our home. The delayed confession, the secondary betrayal of only telling me because he ended it, felt like gasoline poured on my fury. I hammered on his door, the sound echoing in the quiet street. When it opened, Mark stood there, bleary-eyed in pajama pants, confusion turning to shock, then something like guilt when he saw my face. "We need to talk now." My voice was low, dangerous. He hesitated, glanced back into his dark house. then stepped outside, pulling the door almost closed behind him. The confrontation was brutal, raw. I didn't yell. The words came out clipped, icy. My wife confessed. But his face drained of color. He tried stammering denials, excuses about it being a mistake, a brief thing long over. He echoed her timeline ended a year ago. But the sheer proximity, the years of friendly deception, made his words ring hollow. Why end it? I demanded, cutting through his weak justifications. After risking everything, after hiding it right under my nose, why walk away? He looked down, shuffling his feet on the cold concrete step. The silence stretched, thick with his shame. Then, he mumbled, barely audible, because ... I found out something about her. My breath hitched. What could be worse than this? He looked up, meeting my eyes with a grimace. I overheard her talking on the phone once, late at night. Thought she was talking to a friend, but it was ... different. The way she laughed, the things she said, sounded familiar, too familiar. Like how she talked to me in the beginning. He took a shaky breath. I got suspicious. Did some digging on her phone when she left it unlocked one day. Not proud of it. Found messages not to me, to someone else, someone before me. Turns out I wasn't the first time she'd stepped out. The world tilted again. The emotional affair with Mark was horrific, but this, a pattern, serial infidelity. The delayed confession wasn't just about being dumped by him, it was about damage control. She confessed to Mark because he found out about someone else. The betrayal deepened into an abyss I couldn't see the bottom of. Trust wasn't just broken, it was pulverized. I turned without another word, leaving Mark standing there in the chilly night, looking small and pathetic. Walking back to my house felt like marching towards an execution. The anger had morphed into a cold, heavy dread. She was waiting in the living room, perched on the edge of the sofa, face pale, eyes wide with fear. She'd probably heard the door slam, seen me storm out. I stood before her, the silence louder than any accusation. Mark told me, I said, my voice flat, empty. He ended it because he found out about the other one. Her reaction was instant, visceral. Her hand flew to her mouth, a choked gasp escaping. Her eyes widened in pure, unadulterated terror. She didn't deny it. She didn't say a word. She just stared, frozen, confirming the worst twist imaginable. Her delayed confession wasn't remorse. It was strategic, triggered by Mark's discovery, not her conscience. The affair I knew about was just the tip of the iceberg. The foundation of our entire marriage wasn't just cracked, it was built on quicksand of lies and repeated betrayal. The person I'd shared 10 years with was a complete stranger, a serial cheater who only confessed when cornered. The last flicker of hope for infidelity recovery, for marriage counseling, died in that silent, terrified stare. I turned and walked towards the bedroom, not to sleep beside her but to pack a bag. The reconciliation chapter was closed before it even began. The story ended the moment I realized the depth of the deception. Her silence was the only answer I needed. Okay, the user wants me to write the final 300-word conclusion to their YouTube story about marital betrayal. Looking back at the narrative arc we've built from the wife's confession triggered by her affair partner dumping her, through the devastating reveal that the neighbor was involved, to the climax where the husband discovers this wasn't her first infidelity. The resolution needs to accomplish several things. First, it should show concrete consequences. The separation is already in motion with him packing the bag. Second, we need to address the practical fallout, telling the kids, dividing assets, navigating shared spaces while separated. Third, there should be emotional closure showing his journey from shock to clarity. I'll focus on sensory details to keep it human. The weight of the bag zipper, the kid's oblivious laughter as a painful contrast, the hollow sound of his footsteps, leaving. The neighbor's subplot resolves naturally. No need for further confrontation since Mark already confessed his role. The wife's silence in the climax speaks volumes, so we won't give her redemption here. For SEO, I'll weave in keywords like infidelity, recovery, marriage counseling, and trust issues organically through his reflections. The takeaways emerge naturally, that some betrayals are too deep for repair, that self-respect matters, and that healing begins with leaving toxic situations. The final image of him driving away at dawn symbolizes new beginnings, while the what now question keeps it realistic. Crucially, I'll avoid anything violating YouTube policies. No violence, explicit details, or hate speech. The tone stays raw but not gratuitous, focusing on emotional impact rather than sensationalism. The 300-word limit means every sentence must count, so I'll compress the legal process into months of difficult conversations and show his emotional growth through subtle details like being able to say "my kids" without crumbling. Packing that bag felt like packing away 10 years of my life. Every shirt, every pair of socks, was a memory tainted. The silence from the living room was deafening. Her lack of denial, her frozen terror, was the loudest confirmation. Serial infidelity, a pattern of betrayal woven through the fabric of our marriage. The delayed confession about Mark wasn't driven by guilt over hurting me. It was pure damage control, triggered only because he discovered another affair. My wife wasn't just unfaithful. She was a stranger living in my house. The next few weeks were a blur of painful logistics. I moved into a small apartment, the emptiness echoing the hollowness inside me. Telling the kids, carefully, Egypt, that Mummy and Daddy needed to live apart for a while, was the hardest thing I've ever done. Their confused faces, their innocent questions about when I'd be back home, shattered me all over again. We started mediation, cold, necessary conversations about assets, custody schedules, dividing a life built on lies. Every discussion was a fresh reminder of the trust issues she'd created, the foundation she'd dynamited. I saw Mark once, loading groceries into his car. We locked eyes across the parking lot. No wave, no nod. Just a shared look of weary, mutual understanding of the destruction she'd caused. The anger towards him had faded, replaced by a grim pity. He was just another casualty in her wake. The emotional affair, the lies, the proximity, it all felt smaller now, dwarfed by the horrifying scale of her deception. Marriage counseling, infidelity recovery. Those concepts felt laughable. You can't rebuild trust when the entire structure was rotten from the start. Her confession, it wasn't a plea for forgiveness. It was the desperate act of someone finally caught in their own tangled web. Slowly, painfully, the initial shock subsided. The constant replay of her confession, "He dumped me," lost some of its agonizing edge. It was replaced by a grim acceptance. The woman I married didn't exist. The love I thought we shared was an illusion she maintained. Healing wasn't about forgiving her. It was about forgiving myself for not seeing it sooner, for trusting so completely. It was about focusing on my kids, on rebuilding my life, on solid ground free of her poisonous secrets. The 10-year marriage was over, a painful chapter closed. The story ended not with reconciliation but with a quiet, resolute click of my apartment door locking behind me, finally shutting out the chaos she created. The future was uncertain, daunting, but for the first time in a long time it was mine, built on truth. However harsh that truth was, the path forward was mine, to walk one step at a time, away from the wreckage,